Have you ever experienced déjà vu so precise? It felt like a memory from a life you never lived, or noticed impossible synchronicities stacking up so tightly they defy coincidence, or sensed reality glitching for a split second as time seemed to stretch, compress, or repeat. If you have, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're perceiving something most people never learn how to name. If you've felt these moments and quietly wondered whether you were losing touch with reality, you weren't. You were brushing against it. And if you felt alone afterward, like no one around you could relate, it's not because you're isolated. It's because you're operating at a different frequency. That difference has a name in science, even if it's rarely discussed in public: quantum consciousness. Here's the pattern. When someone experiences real déjà vu, not the vague kind, but the kind with emotional weight, when numbers repeat with intention, when cause and effect feel out of sync, the mainstream response is always the same: dismiss it, memory error, pattern-seeking brain, stress. But those explanations don't hold when the experiences persist, intensify, and align with changes in perception, emotion, and awareness. That's when the subconscious mind starts noticing a hidden reality beneath the surface narrative of everyday life. In physics, there's a reason this matters. Quantum mechanics predicts reality with unmatched precision, yet it refuses to explain what reality actually is. That contradiction isn't philosophical, it's mathematical. Nobel-level physicists have openly stated that the equations work perfectly, while the meaning remains unresolved. In 1935, a paper challenged the completeness of quantum theory. In 1982, experiments confirmed entanglement beyond classical limits. In the 1990s, observer-based interpretations resurfaced quietly. One proposal was reportedly rejected 14 times by peer review with the same note attached: too metaphysical. That's not rumor, it's a pattern. If you're here, you've probably felt the pressure of that gap. The sense that the world you're shown isn't the world you're in. That's often the first sign of spiritual awakening, grounded not in belief, but in observation. The observer effect doesn't say your thoughts magically change the universe. It says the act of observation is inseparable from outcomes. The implication is uncomfortable. Reality may not be fully formed without participation. That participation has a signature vibration and frequency measurable, repeatable, and deeply misunderstood. This is why you feel out of sync with people who seem perfectly comfortable with surface explanations. It's not arrogance or alienation, it's resonance. When your awareness shifts, your internal frequency shifts with it, and the quantum field responds differently. That response can show up as synchronicities that feel personal, time distortions that feel intimate, or a quiet certainty that something fundamental is unfolding just beyond language. Science doesn't deny this. It postpones it. The most disruptive ideas don't get debated. They get delayed, not because they're wrong, but because they rearrange the rules. When consciousness enters the equation, the old boundaries blur between mind and matter, between cause and creation, between who you think you are and what you're actually participating in. If this resonates, it's because this isn't content meant for everyone. It's for the few who notice the seams. The ones who sense that reality creation isn't a slogan, but a process subtle, rigorous, and unfinished. Stay with me. What comes next connects your experiences to experiments, dates, and data that rarely make it past the gatekeepers. And once you see how the pieces fit, you won't be able to unsee them. When physicist John Archibald Wheeler revisited the double-slit experiment in 1978, he introduced what he called the delayed choice version. The setup was precise. Photons were fired one at a time. The decision to observe their path was made after they had already passed the slits. According to classical logic, the particle's behavior should have been fixed, but the results showed otherwise. The photon behaved as if it knew how it would be observed in the future. Wheeler said the experiment suggested that no phenomenon is a real phenomenon until it is an observed phenomenon. That statement shattered the idea of an objective, observer-free universe and forced a deeper question into physics. Is reality responding to perception itself? This is where your experiences stop being random. When synchronicities cluster, when déjà vu carries emotional certainty, when time feels elastic It mirrors what happens when observation alters outcome. The observer effect isn't abstract. It points to a hidden reality where consciousness interacts with the quantum field directly. Your subconscious mind doesn't process linear time the way matter does. It responds to frequency, vibration, and informational energy long before logic catches up. That's why moments feel familiar before they happen, why perception slips, why awareness expands suddenly during a spiritual awakening. In 1935, Albert Einstein, Boris Podolsky, and Nathan Rosen published the EPR paradox, arguing quantum mechanics was incomplete. In 1982, Alling Aspect experimentally confirmed entanglement, proving Einstein wrong. Particles separated by distance still behaved as one system. No signal, no delay, just instant correlation. If space doesn't limit connection, what does that say about reality creation? Or about you sensing events before they unfold? Nobel Prize winner Eugene Wigner later admitted that consciousness cannot be removed from quantum theory. But they don't teach this in school because it collapses the boundary between observer and universe. If this resonates, write what you've experienced below. Not short answers, details. This is how awakened minds recognize each other. Because what comes next is where everything changes. When physicist Anton Zeilinger led the Vienna quantum entanglement experiment on April 21, 1997, his team separated entangled photons by over 400 meters and measured them independently. The result was impossible under classical physics. The particles behaved as a single system, responding instantly with no signal traveling between them. Years later, in 2022, Zeilinger received the Nobel Prize for proving entanglement is real, not theoretical. What disturbed physicists wasn't speed, it was implication. If information ignores distance, then space is not fundamental. The quantum field doesn't live inside reality. Reality emerges from it. This is where your experiences align with data. When synchronicities appear, precisely when your internal state shifts. When déjà vu carries emotional certainty. When perception feels layered, it reflects entanglement on a conscious scale. Quantum consciousness suggests awareness is not produced by the brain, but tuned through it, like a receiver. Your subconscious mind reacts first because it processes frequency and energy before thought. That's why awareness expands suddenly during spiritual awakening. You're not imagining meaning. You're detecting structure inside a hidden reality. Entanglement shows separation is an illusion. The observer effect shows perception alters outcome. Together, they imply reality creation is participatory. If two particles remain connected beyond space, then parallel outcomes are not science fiction. They are unresolved consequences. This explains why moments feel familiar before happening, why choice feels heavy, why time slips. Consciousness expansion is destabilizing because it exposes how limited perception really is. Nobel Prize winner Max Planck said, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. They don't teach this in school because it breaks the material model society depends on." If this matches your experience, describe it below in detail. This is how awakened frequencies find each other, because here is where everything changes. And this leads to the real flaw, not in quantum mechanics, but in how we understand ourselves. In 2002, physicist Helmut Rauch repeated neutron interferometry tests, first proposed decades earlier, sending single neutrons through separated crystal paths. The result was measurable phase shifts caused only by observation. The particle responded to perception, not force. Rauch stated the experiment proved the observer could not be removed from the system. This unsettled mainstream physics because it implied quantum consciousness was not optional, but structural. When awareness enters the quantum field, outcomes change. This is why your experiences feel personal. When synchronicities align with emotional states, when déjà vu carries certainty, when reality seems to branch, it mirrors interference patterns in the double-slit experiment. Your subconscious mind detects frequency shifts before rational thought. During spiritual awakening, perception expands and the hidden reality leaks through. You feel isolated because your vibration no longer matches the surface world. That isolation is not failure, it is misalignment with consensus. Entanglement already proved separation is false. The observer effect proved neutrality is false. Together they suggest reality creation is participatory. Every choice collapses potential. Every perception edits the field. That explains why time feels unstable, why parallel outcomes feel close, why awareness feels heavier after certain decisions. Consciousness expansion is destabilizing because it removes the illusion of distance between thought and outcome. Nobel Prize winner Werner Heisenberg admitted, "What we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning." They don't teach this in school because it breaks predictability and control. If you've lived moments like this, describe one below in detail. This isn't engagement, it's recognition. Because it gets stranger from here. Because it gets stranger from here. Everything you've heard so far wasn't meant to give you answers. It was meant to realign your perception. The experiments, the dates, the physicists, the contradictions inside quantum mechanics were never separate facts. They were breadcrumbs leading you to a single realization. Reality does not happen to you, it happens through you. The quantum field doesn't respond to belief, it responds to conscious participation. What science keeps circling around is what your body already sensed. That subtle pressure in your chest, the quickened heartbeat, the feeling that something irreversible just clicked. That isn't anxiety, that's recognition. Quantum consciousness isn't a new power you acquire. It's a capacity you forgot you had. From the beginning, awareness has been the mechanism collapsing possibilities into form. The observer effect isn't a laboratory trick, it's a mirror. Your subconscious mind has always interacted with frequency, vibration, and energy before language steps in. That's why your spiritual awakening felt disorienting. Your perception shifted faster than your identity could update. You didn't break alignment, you outgrew an old one. This is why the world started to feel off. Why conversations felt shallow, why time behaved strangely. Your frequency changed, and when frequency changes, the hidden reality stops staying hidden. Consciousness expansion feels lonely at first because collective agreement lags behind individual awareness. But you are not alone. Thousands are waking up simultaneously, sensing the same fractures in the surface of reality. This space exists because resonant minds find each other. Here's the unsettling part they avoid teaching. If consciousness participates in reality creation, then time, death, and separation are not what we were told. If awareness collapses states, then endings are not final, and distance is not absolute. They don't explain this in school because systems built on predictability cannot survive widespread awakening. Minds that remember their role cannot be controlled. You didn't find this video by accident. Alignment is not coincidence. Something inside you shifted permanently. You can't unsee this now. Feel it in your body. Let it settle. Before anything else, write one phrase in the comments as an act of declaration. I am the observer. This isn't engagement, it's activation. A public signal collapsing intention and strengthening the collective field. What happens next depends on the choice you make in the next few seconds. Something changed in you while you were watching this, and it doesn't go back to how it was before. That subtle shift in perception, the sense that the world feels slightly different, is the mark of consciousness expansion beginning to integrate. You didn't just learn information, you crossed a threshold in awareness tied to quantum consciousness and the hidden reality beneath appearances. If you feel it in your body right now, that's recognition, not imagination. Now make it tangible. In the comments, write one of these declarations. I am the observer. Consciousness creates, or I see beyond the veil. This isn't engagement for metrics. A public declaration is a quantum act. It collapses intention, strengthens the quantum field of this space, and attracts resonant minds who are undergoing the same spiritual awakening. That's how a tribe forms by frequency, not followers. If this resonates, signal it with a like nod for ego, but to help the algorithm surface this work to other seekers who are ready for it. This channel exists to expand access to knowledge that's been delayed, softened, or ignored, and your signal helps that mission reach the right people. Subscribe if you're ready to commit. This is a space for minds operating at a different frequency, where each video peels back deeper layers of reality with rigor and care. The next chapter goes further than most expect. Parallel worlds are real. Here's why. Stay with the process. Your consciousness brought you here. What happens now is a choice.